And repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to my people, the African race, the original man and woman of the earth, and the founders of civilization. I pledge to continue the struggle, which will help to bring my beloved brothers and sisters to total freedom. I pledge to study and discipline myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, so that I may grow into a soldier for justice. Because my people need strong and intelligent warriors. I pledge to live my life standing tall for a person on his or her knees is not respected. And if I am challenged, I must say that I will not surrender my position nor my dignity, but instead we shall endure until the final victory is won. Ashe. You may all be seated. Now we all have a call and response saying that we do in the Soul Vivers Nation. And I say, how do Africans feel? And you respond, and as loud as you can, the spirit is strong, definitely strong. So we got to get the spirit moving in here. We got to transform this place into a place that's conducive for learning and for uplifting our spirits. So how do Africans feel? All right, I can feel that. So now we'd like to welcome you to the lecture where we're going to find out how we can begin pooling together our resources within our communities, how we can begin amassing the power that has been diffused throughout our communities, diffused out of our communities, and begin concentrating that, we're talking specifically about economic power in our own communities. And so I'm going to bring up a brother, the chairman of the Soul Vivers organization, who's been working hard for the past 12 years, bringing knowledge to the black community here in Tubman City. Please put your hands together for Chairman Jabari Muata Natur.
Come before you with the mind state of liberation, coming from a long legacy of battle stars and freedom fighters. I acknowledge my duty to truth and justice as a Soul Vivers Nation representative, and I'm a humble servant of my community. Elders may have permission to speak. All right, I'm start like I always do by recognizing, but she's not here right now, but she will be, believe me, soon. My mother, who is Mama Mayat, I always start off all programs by giving praises and props to her. If you can give her a round of applause, Mama Mayat. And also to my beautiful wife, who is not here yet, but she will be here soon, and my children. You know, I like to, and a man who we call the spiritual father of the Soul Vivers Nation, we call Uncle D. So if you can give them all a round of applause, because they make all of this happen here. Like I said, I start off like that because if it wasn't for them nurturing me, you know, and nurturing the organization and giving us the strength to do the things that we do, we wouldn't be here today. So I always start off by honoring and respecting those people. How y'all feel? How the Africans feel? All right, y'all ready to see Claud Anderson today? All right, all right. The brother has definitely a timely message, but we put on the flyers, if you look at the flyers, one of the flyers on one side said it was about, you know, black dollars making sense. And also on the other side of the flyer, it was talking about the Tubman City Resource Guide, the Tubman City Black Power Resource Guide. Give the Tubman City Black Power Resource Guide a round of applause. This is very important because oftentimes we say it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm looking at black businesses right now, and right now we're not in a good state right now. Black businesses, most of the time, they go out of business within 2 years of being in operation. I know myself because, you know, I've been in business for 7 years, and it's still hard for me being a black business owner right now. And I suppose I've been gone after the first 2 months in being in business. But just so happened, just by God and the ancestors, God and directed me, we still here today. But it takes a village to raise a child. And what we're attempting to do with the Black Power Resource Guide is to have a village around your business. We look at your business as a child, so we try to create a village with the Black Power Resource Guide. I work in a barbershop, and in that barbershop, we can pretty much get whatever we want in the barbershop. Car, engine, electric toothbrushes, painter, whatever you need. When people need something, they call us first. Hey man, you know somebody that fix toilets? You know, such, you know somebody that do this and do that? So we started looking at this like, dang, man, these resources together. People that have this at it, but because we don't put those things together, commitments, not each other. Have any choice? It ain't, you know. We have to. The real issue is that our people on the streets every day. And if we can't supply them with food, clothing, and shelter, y'all think y'all seen some crazy stuff that's now? And you know you waking up in the morning now, there's 2-3 people getting killed every day almost. At least, and they getting shot 3 at a time. But if we don't stand up, we ain't going to stop the crime if we can't give our own people. So that's why we got to support the businesses that we have, increase their wealth. If we increase their wealth, then they can hire some of these brothers and sisters that's out on the street. That's all tied in together. So if you're just in business just to get your own selfish thing and get your own money and get your own cars and all that kind of stuff and automatic pools or whatever it may be, you ain't in business for the right reason. You know, we got to save our people. We got to give our people jobs. You know what I mean? So what we're going to do, we have some couple dynamic speakers that we have here before Claud Anderson. Some brothers that's been inspiring to me, you know, to Soul Vibers Nation. We're going to get ready to bring up here this brother, very humble brother, but I always tell him that he's one of my mentors. And this is one of the only brothers, and, you know, I can get hot-headed sometimes. And this is one of the only brothers that I'm very humble when I'm around. You know, and he really taught me. I watched him, you know what I mean? And sometimes, like I said, when I used to work for him at everyone's place, I didn't understand why he would do certain things. But when I was in business, when I went in business, I realized why he did those things. And this brother, he's just a very humble brother. I appreciate him. I watch him. I learn from this brother. And he's sitting in the audience, but we're going to bring him up to the stage today. Give it up for the owner of everyone's place, Brother Nati. Give him a big round of applause.
How everybody feel? Yeah, greetings. I didn't recognize a word Jabari was talking about until he said everyone's place. And then I figured out, yeah, that must be me, you know. But I was on my way over here this evening, and I met a brother who was on his way over here too. And he said, Nati, you know, I've seen a lot of organizations and businesses, just like Jabari said, came up and closed down in a year or two. So why is Jabari surviving? Why is Survivors Nation surviving? Why is Reality Speak surviving? That's not what I intended to talk about at all. I intended to talk about something totally different. But when he asked me that, I took that as my mantra. And then I came here and Jabari started talking about the Reality Speaks on Survivors Nation doing this for 12 years when they were only supposed to do it for 3 months. So that's definitely my mantra. So I'm going to put aside all that I had gotten together to say talk about, you know, Survivors Nation tonight. And I'm going to talk about why Survivors Nation is still here. And I thought about 9 things. And the first thing is leadership. You know, leadership is a critically important thing. You know, sometimes we look at an organization and it might look like it's a lot of individual leadership. But no leadership is individual. So we have to look at the collective leadership that Jabari and Survivors Nation have around them and the effect of collective leadership. You know, I was talking with Sam Greenlee just last week because I wanted to ask him about certain things in the movie that he put together in the 60s called Spook Who Sat by the Door. And in it, he has a part in it where he said that if anybody take the leadership out, everybody should be able to move up at least 3 ranks and to be able to run that organization. And I hope that's what it is in Survivors Nation. You know, you can look at it and you can see it. So that's critically important. And why I'm saying this at the same time is because, you know, when Jabari encouraged you to open business or to start your own organization, all those elements that make an organization or a business successful, these are the elements. And these are the elements I'm seeing in Reality Speaks on Survivors Nation, why I'm putting it out to you. The second thing is to be visionary, to have a vision. And being visionary is able, almost like a prophet, to be able to see the future. But not just to see the future, to be able to shape what you're doing now. So when that future comes 2 or 3 years ago, what you are doing collides with it so that you're all at the same point at the same time. That's what's called consciousness. To have that vision, you can see, you know, trends. That's what mathematicians do. You know, that's what scientists do. They are able to plot a graph to see the future and to know how to collide with that future and to be in time with it. So as a conscious organization, that's what Jabari and them do. You know, they look to see what's going on because they can pick up the trends that are taking place today, and they can see 3 years ahead of time exactly where things are going to be. So they start plotting the course from now so that when 3 years come, they will be exactly where they need to be and right in collision with the times. So visionary leadership, that's a second important thing. And the ability to change and to be flexible, that is also crucial in terms of keeping an organization together, in terms of extending the life of an organization. You have to be flexible. You know, some people, you might be in business and you sell books and you see it's raining outside. The best thing to do is go buy some umbrellas and sell, you know. That's what is flexibility in business. And Survivors Nation, they have that flexibility. You know, I've seen Jabari going through the changes, you know, try one thing and you find that's not working right and you go to another thing. And that's the flexibility you have to have. You know, you can't be steadfast and say, look, this is what I want to do and this is the only thing I'm going to do. How you feel? And that's it, you know. So you have to have that flexibility, and that's the flexibility that over the years I've observed with Jabari and them, you know. They have the flexibility to try something, and if it don't work out right, try another thing, you know, and that's great, you know. And the fourth aspect is stick-to-itness, you know. Jabari, Survivors Nation, they've had a lot of challenges over the years, but they've never seen the challenges and the negative aspect of the challenges look like a defeat that must put them down permanently, you know. And we all have challenges, and Jabari and them has used those challenges to, you know, move to a higher level in terms of the consciousness, you know, mentally, spiritually, and physically. The fifth thing is to believe in what you're doing. And in Survivors Nation, you can see the young brothers and sisters, they absolutely believe in what they're doing. And that is critically important because sometimes if you're not really convinced what you're doing is the right thing, you know, philosophically, you know, spiritually, mentally, you know, with challenges, you might just say, you know, later for this, you know, I don't have time for this right now. But when you believe in something, it don't matter, you know, what challenges come up, you know, you stick to it because you, in your heart, believe in that. The sixth thing, which we all know, is hard work, you know. These are some hard-working brothers and sisters here, you know. And sometimes they even try to work me hard, and I have to tell them, wait, hold up, you know. That's right now. But there's some hard-working brothers and sisters. You know, you might just see an event here. You know, it takes a lot of work to put an event like this on, you know. So we have to definitely respect that. You know, the type of work they put out there. Matter of fact, Jabari, you didn't put no ad inside here for me. No? But they asked me about 100 times to tell you the truth. That's how they stick to it and they hard work, you know. But, you know, we have to support Survivors Nation, you know, in many ways. You know, they have many ways you could support them. You could put an ad in the papers, you know, or, you know, you know, they have products they sell and events and other things, you know. You make a donation. They're good at that. They always call for that, so I had to help them on that one, you know. And the ability to take criticism. You know, over the years, you know, you'll hear somebody, like, criticize Survivor. Matter of fact, when I was here the last time, we had a flag was hanging here. And I know you're here, brother, I see you. So brother was like, hey, you know, that flag is upside down. You didn't see that? But, you know, Jabari and them, Survivors Nation, they have the ability to take criticism because we all get criticized over the years, you know, negatively or positively. But they have the ability to respond to criticism in a way which is not antagonistic. They will listen to your criticism, whether it's positive or negative. If it's positive and they see the necessary changes they have to make, they'll make it. If they think, well, you just criticize and they criticize, they'll leave you alone, but not in an antagonistic way. So that's important in terms of leadership, to be able to handle that criticism and come out of it with the spirit still intact. And then their relationship with revolutionary theoreticians, you know, intellectual giants, you know, cultural artists, regular working people with myself, that ability to be able to get a Dr. Claud Anderson to come here tonight to Baltimore to speak, you know, the ability to bring Del Jones, Laila Africa, and Ali and Muhammad and all the people of the Taiwan powers and all the people that they have brought over the years, you know, that's really important because a lot of people criticize these meetings, well, what is it doing? But it gives us a chance to interact with these people who consider themselves intellectual giants, you know, revolutionary theoreticians, to be able to question them and ask them, because a lot of times, you know, we are inspired or we get information or we move on just from what we hear, a word we hear said, you know, it's like going to church, you know. Preacher give you a word of inspiration and you're good for the day, you know. Well, here when you come and you get these deep thoughts, it's something you could carry on for the rest of your life. Sometimes I went to Dr. Ben lecture and he might put out one line, and that affected me for the rest of my life, Dr. Clark, and so on. So these people who they bring here, you know, they're people who give you education, inspiration, and levels of knowledge to go on that you could build on for the rest of your life. So that's an important aspect of leadership that Jabari and them definitely incorporate. And the last I want to say is community support, which you're here to do, and their level of doing business. And again, this was an X-Man show. When I came in here and got this flyer, it's like everything I needed to talk about you, Jabari, is right here. You know, but this flyer here, it says that in Baltimore, there are 5.7 billion African people, which is about 65% of the population. And we work, that's what they say. I lost it. We work for, no, what am I saying? All right, 415,725 black people, which is 65% of the population. We work for $5.7 billion. And Caucasians work for $5.3 billion. Now, that must not be talking about business owners and investments. That have to just be talking about salaries. These white folks not reporting the salaries. Take my word for it. They're not. And the reason why I say that is because when you go lower down, you see that we pay $1.1 billion in federal income taxes, $710 million to state income taxes, and you go on. Them white folks ain't paying that kind of stuff. They ain't reporting. Take my word for it. They're not. And then, when I go to the last page, whoa. It said that we spend 99% of our money with somebody else. That's some kind of indictment. But, you know, thanks that we still have people like, you know, Jabari working hard on our behalf, you know, with his Black Power resource guide, you know, to make sure that black business get counted and black business stay alive more than 2 months. So I want to say Asante Sana to you. Asante Sana for Survivors Nation for giving me a chance to address you this evening. And, you know, definitely support Survivors Nation and Reality Speaks in, you know, every way that you could. Ashe.
Give it up, give it up. Give Brother Nati another round of applause. And like he said, two of the most successful businesses that I do know with Everyone's Place and even with Brother Ray Haysbert, that what happens is the Black Power Resource Guide will be reprinted by the end of July. So all those businesses that's here now that want to get in the Black Power Resource Guide, you will get in there, you will come out by the end of July. So we didn't get a chance to get those ads in on time to get it in the way that we needed to for all the artwork and all those different things. But you know that they're big supporters of the Survivors Nation, and we appreciate that. So the next brother that I'm going to, and if you're interested in the Black Power Resource Guide, there's a sign-up sheet If you leave out when we go to break or intermission or whatever like that, there's a sign-up sheet. Please sign the sign-up sheet so we can get right in touch with you, because we got to get this done as soon as possible. I know a lot of us black folks, we like to stretch things out down to the last day that we possibly can, which is hard for us financially and actually getting the artwork and doing some of the things that we need to do. I just wanted to say also, not only are we building this community, this business community, and just, want you to support black businesses, there must be a body that's formed when we form these businesses, that if black folks are doing bad business, then there has to be a collective that's actually going to pull them up in general, because there's a lot of times you get somebody to come and do your work, and you're trying to support black businesses a lot of time, and they may not come back to finish your work, this, that, or the other. We must develop in our community a process, not just giving up on black folks, because what most black people do is say, man, I hired somebody to do my roof and he was black. You know what? I ain't dealing with black people no more, man. That's it. I'm done. I ain't dealing with no more black people no more. And then they start talking that foolishness about the Mexicans work 5 times harder than black folks and all that kind of stuff. Don't nobody work harder than black people. Nobody work harder than black people. We built this country. We might be a little sick right now because it's crack, cocaine, heroin, and e-pills, and many of the ills that we have in our community, but don't nobody work harder than black folks. When we get ourselves together as a community, you'll see us build what we need to build, and you'll see how hard black folks work. So get that myth out your head when people say, I'm going to run and get the Mexicans. They work 5 times harder than black people. All right? So we're going to bring up another mentor of mine. When I was trying to learn how to do business and trying to learn the phrases and all of the terms and different things, there was a class called the Edge Center, and a part of my brother Sundiata, who's not with us here today, we took that course and we learned a lot about business, and we also met Mr. Haysbert, and we had many conversations, and he would sit down and talk to us, and he would take us in atmospheres, different places that we wouldn't normally go in, and showed us different things, and he actually took a liking into what it was that we were doing, and we really appreciate this brother. And to this day, I can call Mr. Haysbert at any time for help, and he would be there to assist us. And he would, do words or whatever, or help you out with the business or whatever it may be. We want to get ready to bring this legend in Baltimore, Tubman City. We want to get ready to bring him up with a round of applause. Give it up for Brother Raymond Haysbert. All right.
Good evening. Come on, I know it's been a long day, but you should feel better than that. Good evening. All right, let's get into it. I'm Ray Haysbert. I operated the Park Sausage Company. How many people here have heard of the Park Sausage Company? Hold your hand, please. Oh, fine. I'm glad to hear that, because you always talk better when you're talking to customers than you do for everyone else. And I appreciate being in such friendly surroundings. But I'm not here to talk about Park Sausage or the millions of dollars that I've made and spent, so I don't have any left, okay? But the situation over a period of time. When I left the Tuskegee in 1945, I started in business, teaching classes, running a bookstore. And I learned from there. I came to Baltimore in 1952, and helped start the Park Sausage Company. I helped found the Advance Bank, helped find the Harbor Bank. I've been to the big towns. I've heard the big talk. I've eaten fine foods, but I came from welfare. Only back in my day, it was called relief. And it wasn't money. We were actually given surplus foodstuffs. But I was never poor, not in my mind. I was broke, but I wasn't poor. And when the Salvation Army used to come around with the buses to pick up the poor kids and give them a good meal on Thanksgiving, I sneaked on the bus. I turned my head so they wouldn't realize that. I knew it was for the poor kids, but I didn't consider myself as poor. at the time. And because of the attitude, my mindset, I was able to take this 6 inches between this ear and this ear and set it so that I could come through the adversities of life. Back in those days, laws were still on the books saying that a black man could not look out the same window as a white man. Back in those days, my grandfather, as a slave, was subject to the laws that prevented any blacks from running a printing company, a drugstore, raising farm animals, doing anything. Reading and writing, you could not have a job that called for you to read and write. Now, when you think about our ancestors, then you say, well, how did they survive through all of that? And I say it's because of their attitudes. That in spite of all the hardships that they went through, their head was on right. They believe in God, so they had a spiritual dimension. But they're also optimistic. They're also looking upward. They're looking towards the day when we would be free and prepared for that. If someone asked me how I was able to, 1980, I made $1 million overnight. One day I woke up, next day I was a millionaire. How was it? It's caused by, you know, as they say in real estate, location, location, location. Well, it's really preparation, preparation, preparation. Because if you're not prepared to do a deal, how can you do it? If you're not prepared to face some of the competition from the other tribes, and by that I mean the Korean tribe and the Japanese tribe and the Irish tribe and all the other tribes, then you've got to be prepared. Whether it's education, a thirst for knowledge, whether it's health, whatever it is, you have to get ready for it. If you're not ready for it, you got a problem. If you don't have knowledge, that's the new currency. If you don't have knowledge, you are at a disadvantage. If that automobile salesman knows more about the deal than you do, you're going to be taking advantage of it from an economic viewpoint. And so it is throughout life, and that's what I found as I went around, that the difference maker was how much I knew. If people are cutting deals, if people right now are farming, what's going to happen to Baltimore? And they are. The key point is we as a people have no knowledge of what they're doing. We're not on the inside. We don't have the information flow that they do. That is why I say preparation, preparation, preparation. We're going to be blessed tonight by a gentleman who has done extensive research in the plight of our black brothers and sisters. He was the one that I checked his book, which is this particular book, was Black Labor and White Wealth. The search for power and economic justice. Dr. Anderson researched these particular laws that I am going to recite to you that I mentioned. And you said, well, why do you want to tell me about that? It can explain to some extent the fix that we're in. If you look down at the port of Baltimore, big deal. You see it in the papers. Why aren't there more blacks in things relating to the port and shipping? Because in 1805, they passed a law saying that blacks couldn't engage in anything relating to they couldn't even have recreation. The other people out there having boats in the sun, but we couldn't even do that. If you want to ask about why we're segregated for so long, apartheid in Maryland, apartheid in America started in Maryland. They had a segregation policy in 1619. That's way before the War of Independence or anything else. They also barred blacks from all trades. The United States, the federal people, in 1790 declared this was a white nation. In 1809, they excluded any blacks from carrying a mail. In 1819, they forbid assembly. So this group that we have tonight could not assemble if those laws were being upheld. But they also had laws against teaching black folks to read and write. In 1800, they stopped blacks from working in printing jobs or entertainment. You couldn't have been a rap singer under these laws. I mentioned the jobs. You couldn't get a business license. They wouldn't give you a license to have a business. You can't, there was a tax on any black person who worked. You could have no contracts with black mechanics. So even as we asking the government to give us contracts for carpentry, et cetera, that was forbidden to our ancestors. We couldn't raise, sell tobacco or corn. We were not permitted to drive hacks, carts, drays of any kind. In 1836, we were not allowed to engage in any activity that was profit-making. In 1844 in Maryland, there's no person of color was allowed in the carpentry trade. So when it gets right down to it, Carter G. Woodson, the great historian, says, if you can affect a man's mind, you don't have to worry about him anymore. He'll do it himself. So if that's practice of affecting our minds, as some people say the plantation mentality, other times the dependency syndrome, those particular things say that if they capture the black person's mind, they'll make themselves poor. They'll do it to themselves. They won't see the wisdom of coming together. As I said, it was against the law for blacks to get together. Take the law off, we should have all gotten together and collectively vote, for an example. No, it didn't make any difference, because after that law passed, that 6 inches between the ears kept us in slavery. And the only way of breaking that out is to change our mind. So my favorite saying is, we're just an attitude away from greatness. It's just that simple. $100 million for the Empire of Baltimore, or somebody else gave $50 million, and all of that money, all of that time, they tore down the towers, the housing towers, and fixed a nice garden project. But you know what no one was doing anything with? The people's mind as such. And so that's the reason why our young people, some people say that welfare was a curse in a lot of instances when it made our young people not prepare for life because they were going to get the money from the government. And every time the government changed, every 4 years or so, they have a different idea about how much money they're going to give you. But that's not the damage. I ate government food for so long that I thought government food was a brand name, not for sale. I'd go with the Boy Scouts and I'd look at their pork and beans they were cooking, and they were red and juicy. And I looked at my not-for-sale pork and beans, and they were pale. And I said, and then theirs came in a red and white can called Campbell's, Del Monte. Mine came from not-for-sale. The first underwear I wore had not-for-sale right across the back as such. But the question of it is, did it affect my mind? Because you can get out of anything if your mind is not affected. A baby who's with dirty diapers, it's a mess. But the mother's mind says, the father's mind says that this baby's mess has got nothing to do with whether I had to put my hands there and wash out those diapers. The difference between the slave mentality and independent people who engage in self-empowerment, who strive to be self-sufficient, is just a change in the way our mind is set. Positive, negative. Stay away from negative people. They make your leg hurt. But a positive frame of mind will let you be victorious. As you know, we have survived. And even the name of Survivor Limited, or it's LLC. LLC. It's based upon the question of just surviving. Well, think about the promises of the King. The Lord has put out a lot of promises, and it didn't say anything about surviving. It spoke of being victorious. And so that is a positive frame of mind to be in it. In fact, it's already done. You're already rich if you have that frame of mind. Now let's talk economics, money. I've seen it come and I've seen it go. I had to my company in those days was the equivalent of $60 billion a year. And I had to sell a lot of people. They had to buy an awful lot of sausage every week. It was part of our job to persuade them. But because we knew that black and white folks had an image in their mind about black folks, we didn't declare that we were black. We didn't deny it. When you said Moore Park sausage is mom, we put a little white boy on there with freckle face and red hair. So some students down when I was teaching at the University of Virginia, they said, well, why didn't you get a little black boy to say Moore Park sausage is mom? I said, it's marketing. Those people have an image in their mind about black folks that would make the sausage not be good enough. It would not be valued. And surely enough, the same thing among my people. Because self-patronage, every group, every tribe in the world has patronized themselves. Certainly, well, they talk about the difference between blacks making it and other groups that have made it. Remember this, that the other groups did not have the laws and the repression against them. If the Irish, the Koreans, whoever had those laws against them, they would think differently. But our reaction was, as Brother Jabroya says, is to go to Towson and spend our money. You say, big deal, I can get a bargain, a $90 pair of shoes there. But it isn't the first dollar that you spend, it's the second and third dollar, that circulating dollar, that indirect dollar. That's what's got the Chinese buying more cars, Japanese save 10% of their money because the money is sent out of the community. It's sent as a drain on the black inner city. Money is being drained out in the following ways. Number one, all mortgage money and the interest on it goes out of the community. All the rents. 100,000 people pay rent. Black folks pay rent in Baltimore City. That means every month there's a check, a cashier's check, a money order, or cash going out of the community. And that money is not available for Israel Baptist Church. It doesn't flow through Stop, Shop, and Save. It doesn't help support conscious heads. It doesn't help anyone because the money has gone. When they decided to build Raven Stadium, my office was right there at the first escalator. When they decided to build it, they showed that if there were $450,000 in salaries paid out, and so much in direct expenses, it would be good. But why put $30 million into a stadium for that little bit of money? No. What they knew was that people were going to go to those hotels. They were going to go to those restaurants. They were going to hire taxis, all of to their own tribe, and do those things so that they have a ratio that says for every dollar you spend in a community, there's an additional $1.67 that goes with that dollar. A dollar, which means that your dollar spent outside of the community, you never see the $1.67. So no wonder you got in Fells Point, you got $400,000 condos, $450,000. Why not? They got their money and they got ours too. Because of the fact that when the money goes there, they can send their kids to school. They can have better health care. They don't have to steal to live. They can raise prices. Downtown is like going to New York or someplace now. Whew. The hotel's now $240 to stay a night. Who's paying all of this? It's those people that got their dollar, their $1.67, but black folks $1.67, so that they're getting maybe $4 because that's true. And that's one of the reasons why China is doing so well. They're really booming. Because I guess I got 70% of the stuff I wear has got China, made in China on it. And that dollar is going over there helping those people over there. My point about self-patronage, we're not getting anybody. But that 6 inches of space between your ears in terms of your mindset determines whether you're going to be poor or not. And we've got enough poverty in Baltimore to go around with 25% poverty. Now, I know they say the Lord says that poverty will always, the poor will always be with us. But it don't have to be 25% and everybody else is 3%. So let's just cut it down to 3% like everybody else. And we can do that. We have the, I'm 87 years old. I've seen a lot. And I have stopped trying to get someone outside of the community to help us. Because you can be in prison with the right frame of mind and still succeed. Nobody, ladies and gentlemen, nobody's going to help us. Nobody's helping us get jobs. You know, you can't do that. And you don't have to do it because you're children of the King. You're already successful. Instead of asking Hopkins, I was in a discussion group this morning and said, well, instead of asking Hopkins what they're going to do for us, we should be asking ourselves, what are we going to do for us? Because that's what it's going to come down to. You know, it's an old story about, he's not heavy, he's my brother. It don't last for so long because your brother gets pretty heavy. You know, every time you turn around, that you have to carry him. But the beautiful part is the talent that we have, the brain power that we have, the character that we have, all of that is that we can do it for ourselves if we can unlock that slavery mentality, unlock the welfare mentality, because it is true that if you feed somebody every day and every month, they'll stop and let you bring it to them. Y'all got family that knows that's true. They'll wait till you do it. That even happened with Paris Hilton. It destroyed her confidence in herself because everything she got, somebody had to give it to her. And she just doesn't feel right. And a lot of rich children just take off, go crazy, because they can't feel that. A man is not a man, and a woman is not a woman without a job. And you don't want to go someplace and they ask you, what do you do? And you say, I got a check coming in every Monday or every once a month. Because what does that make you? It makes you be criticized. In closing, what we need is a development revolution. We need a revolution. We don't talk about gradual stuff. We need a development revolution. We need ourselves to self-develop ourselves. We need to develop our educational system. You know, I can't even, what kind of books do you think I studied out of? So old books is not the answer. And if you think every one of the teachers I had was wonderful, you're wrong. I had some bad teachers. But what I did have was an attitude. It's a mindset. But we should have, I was talking to Les Brown, I went to a workshop. Les Brown, an inspirational speaker, and he said that a mindset is crucial, and that the development of that mindset being positive, knowing the fact that you have so much value is crucial to our success. And I would close by saying it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Thank you.
Give him a round of applause to Ray Haysbert. Definitely deserving that. Like he said, he's 87 years old, and the things that he has done. For many who don't know exactly, because I didn't say from the beginning who Ray Haysbert was, he was the person that owned Park Sausages, and he's the owner of Forum Caterers right now, and many other things in the community that he's doing in the community. And he has those business classes and courses that he does teach to our community if you're interested in those things. So we appreciate that. But if he can get up, drive a car, and do many of the things that even we do right now, if he can show us that he's still doing business at 87 years old, and we act like when we 20 and 30 years old, man, I can't do it, man, I can't do such and such. This man is still doing it, still doing business at 87 years old, and we appreciate that from Mr. Ray Haysbert. So we're going to get ready to move into the main event. We're going to bring up a hard-working sister to introduce our speaker for tonight. This sister came to the Soul Vibe. She's been there for almost 3 years now and actually changed many different processes in the Soul Vibers Nation. She came in, she brought organization, many different things that we did not have in our organization, and we really appreciate her. She's a Harriet Tubman in Soul Vibers Nation. Let's give it up for Sister Yah to introduce Brother Claud Anderson. Sister Yah.
I come before you with the mind state of liberation, coming from a long legacy of battle stars and freedom fighters. I acknowledge my duty to truth and justice as a Soul Vibers Nation representative, and I am a humble servant of my community. Elders, may I have permission to speak? Asante, how do Africans feel? How do Africans feel? We really appreciate you for coming out tonight and understanding how serious this crisis is that we are in right now. Understanding that if we do not pull together our resources, practice group economics, that we will not be able to solve the many problems that exist in our community today. You have with you a Black Power resource guide. Please use the Black Power resource guide. It's not just there as a booklet for you to just see it and say, oh yeah, these are a couple of ads, a couple of businesses. It's for you to actually use as a resource. If we do not begin supporting each other, supporting our businesses, we're going to be in a very, very, very bad condition. If you think it's bad now, wait and see how it's going to be in a few years if we do not begin to change the way we relate to each other and change the way we relate to our money. This brother, Dr. Claud Anderson, goes around the country speaking about group economics. He has a national plan for empowering Black people through economics. We have to understand that economics is a tool. It is a tool, and we must learn how to use it effectively to solve the problems that we face. We cannot look at it as an isolated item. It is connected to everything else. In this society, we need to use our money, and we need to pull together our resources. Dr. Claud Anderson has written several books. One of them is Black Labor, White Wealth, Dirty Little Secrets, where they talk about the accomplishments and achievements that we have made. So it encourages us, and also what he is widely known for, Powernomics, which details his Black national plan for empowerment of black people through economics. I'm glad that you are here tonight, and I would like for you to welcome Dr. Claud Anderson.
Well, good evening to you, and thank you very much for that much appreciated applause, and I'm glad to see each and every one of you. And as I said, I don't get too many chances to come to Baltimore, even though I'm only about 45 minutes away from here. Why are you all sitting so far back? Why don't you come down front where I can see you? I'm not going to bite any of you, I promise I won't. And come on down front. I'm not quite sure of all what they want me to talk about with you today, but I'm going to run through quite a few things. And I'll wait till everybody gets down front and those who get together, because it's easier for me to watch you and talk with you here than off to the sides. First of all, let me thank my host for inviting me back up here. And what they've indicated to me was that they're primarily concerned about trying to get you all together, unite as black folk, and try to see if you can survive what's coming up around the curve in America and around the world for black folk. And particularly they want me to focus on economics. So this evening I'm going to take maybe, he wants me to spend about an hour running through a variety of things with you, to give you a better understanding of where we are and where you ought to be going as black people. And in the course of my talk in the next hour, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to step on some of your toes and talk about some things that you consider to be sacrosanct or semi-religious or things that are sacred to you. I might even talk about some of your black leaders. But what I'm going to tell you today is very, very important for you. And I want you to understand clearly that black folk in America in a world of trouble. You're in a world of trouble in this country and in the world. And contrary to what you hear, I don't care whether it comes out of a black mouth or a white mouth, anybody that tells you that black folk are progressing in America is lying to you. You're lying to you. And right now, if we don't do some very specific things in America and in Baltimore in the next 3 years, not 200 years from now, but in the next 3 years, you are through in America. You're through. You're going to become a permanent underclass in 3 years. And an underclass means those individuals who, by the nature of their circumstances, will be forced to live as either beggars or criminals. That's where you're going. I'm going to say it to you again in case you missed that. Here in Baltimore and any blacks in America, you got 3 years to get your act together or you're going down. You're going to be forced to be either beggars or criminals for the rest of your existence. You got an unending influx of immigrants coming to this country. They're going to bury you alive. That bill they have right now in Congress, that is your tombstone. They're going to stick that up over your head. And any black person in this city that's shucking and jiving, they better get out of your way so you can get ahead, because bad things are coming. This auditorium should have been full right now with black folk that understand the nature of your circumstances. And obviously all the teachers, your elected officials, your ministers are shucking and jiving in Baltimore. And when I say bad times are coming, it's because we are not focusing on what we're supposed to be focusing on. You've been intentionally misled and misdirected. You've been sent down the wrong road. And in comparative and proportional terms, we are exactly where we were as black folk in this country. We're exactly where we were in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. You have not moved not one iota in 140 years. And people are shucking and jiving. What you're doing is enjoying the fruits of the social illusion by them telling you somehow that because you have social integration and civil rights that you have achieved something. We as black folk have achieved absolutely nothing with civil rights and integration. Any black person who got more than a third-grade education should know that you had more. You had more before integration started than you got today. You've gone backwards. Now, let me give you an example when I say comparatively speaking in 1860. In 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, in this country, you only had about 287,000 black people that were free out of almost 4.5 million. The other 4.5 million were enslaved all over America. Only 287,000 were free. And yet, out of those 287,000 black people, they had succeeded in acquiring one half of this nation's wealth. 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth. With only 287,000 free. Now here we are, 140 years later, in the richest nation on earth. 140 years later, you still own and control 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. And contrary to what people keep telling you through a lot of civil rights leaders, civil rights and integration does not decide equal opportunity for you. You cannot get equality through civil rights and integration. What decides your opportunities in America is what you own and control. That's what decides your opportunities. You can have all the civil rights you want. You cannot go into an expensive restaurant or an expensive hotel if you don't have any money. They're playing games with you. You must own and control. And what they fail to tell you is that the whole process of slavery and Jim Crow segregation did not happen to black folk by accident. That wasn't any big accident. For you to wind up being enslaved for over 500 years in this country and 1,300 years around the world, that wasn't an accident. It happened intentionally. What your leaders should be asking is, why did it happen to you? Why were black folk enslaved all those centuries? For what? There must have been a purpose. If the purpose was strictly to maldistribute and misdistribute almost 100% or 99.5% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, businesses, and income, and controls of all levels of government. That was the purpose of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. So one group of people could live a very advantaged lifestyle, and these over here who are black would have nothing. That was the purpose of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. Now here you're talking about civil rights and integration. When did you correct it? If the other group controls 99.5% of everything and you control nothing, where is your equal opportunity? Where is your equality? Why are you sending black kids to school every day and people telling them that you're in an equalized society, a colorblind society, and you got nothing? You own and control nothing. I can come in this city right now and drive around. I'll bet you right now I can't find 2 blacks in this city that owns more than a 3-story building. Everything in this city that's high-rise belongs to whites. You don't own any bridges. You don't own any in the tollways. You don't own any airplanes. You don't own any boats. You don't own any skyscrapers. You don't own the media. You don't own the banks of any consequence. You own nothing. You don't produce anything. You wear clothes, but you don't produce any of any consequence. Or you wear eyeglasses, you don't produce any eyeglasses. You don't own any hospitals. We own nothing. And just as happy as we want to be, go watch TV. Every black you see has been put into a safe category. The social illusion that's being created for you to dissuade you from doing something to save yourselves, they put a social illusion on TV with safe blacks. The images that are put in front of you show you that those are safe blacks. Any black that's successful in America has some kind of an illicit relationship with a ball. He's either running with a football, baseball, basketball, tennis ball, golf ball, standing on the stage telling jokes, dancing, singing, pretending he's having a ball. They even got a program now on TV called The Ballers. Because see, white folks know you're safe if you got a relationship with a ball going. Because there's about that much distance between a cotton field and an athletic field. In the athletic field, you were chasing cotton balls. Now you're chasing basketball and tennis balls. You haven't moved one iota. The same person that owned the cotton fields now owns the basketball teams and the football teams. We're not moving. 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth. That's what slavery did to you. It maldistributed everything in the hands of the dominant white society. As an example, you didn't acquire any wealth since 1860. Let me show you some other indications. In 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, almost 99% of all the black people in America, slave and free, was working for whites. Either in a white corporation, in a white business, in some white office, making wealth comfort for whites, on a plantation or whatever it is. Here you are, 140 years later, and again, 98% of all the black people in America work for whites. They either work in some level of government, white businesses, city government, state government, school teaching. Only 2% of all the blacks in America work in their own communities for themselves. Only 2% work for themselves. You haven't changed in 140 years. Let me try it another way if you still don't understand my point. On the eve of the Civil War in 1860, again, at that time, go and look at all the prisons in the United States and examine their records. I found out in the records, when I looked in the prisons in Savannah, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New York, Washington, D.C., looked at all the prisons, and I found out at that time, even though only 287,000 blacks were free, blacks made up over 51% of all the prisoners. You weren't even free and you made up 51% of the prisoners. Now I look around 140 years later, today, and I still find black folk make up over 51% of all the prisoners. Where have you changed? You don't own anything. You're still in prison. Still work for other people. You're enjoying a social illusion. Now you're fat and happy because we can go to someone else's restaurant. We can go to someone else's school. We can go to someone else's hotel. We can live in someone else's community. And we don't understand the negative aspects of that. That is a death sentence. And we don't understand what racism is. So what we are doing is committing suicide. We got 3 years ago before we go into it. 3 years ago, before you're going to see massive suicides happening. Because you don't even understand what racism is. I've gone all around the world. Even when I was with President Carter in the White House, I had to take trade missions in the third world nations, in Africa, Latin America, the Middle East. And invariably, wherever I spoke, I would ask people, do you know what racism is? I would even offer $1,000 for a person to tell me what racism is. I still got black folk today who don't even know what racism is. They talk about it. Find me one that understands what racism is. Every time I ask them, what is racism? Well, Dr. Anderson, racism is not liking somebody. It's prejudice, it's bigotry, it's hatred. No, it's not. Racism is a competitive relationship between groups of people that are competing for the ownership and control of wealth and resources and power. That's what racism is. Racism is a group phenomenon. Racism is a team sport. You cannot participate in racism if you don't play as a team. You can't correct it. You're not even in the game. Racism is like football, basketball, and baseball. You play as a team or you lose. And I got all these so-called educated blacks in America on TV, heading up civil rights organizations, getting elected to public office. Don't you understand what racism is? That's why they don't do anything. They go there and tell you, well, I'm in a public office now, I'm a mayor or governor. My thing is to make sure everybody get along. That's not affecting racism. Nobody asked you to get elected to office to make people get along. Now, racism never existed on the earth until the 1400s. Never had it. There was no such thing as racism. You had people, for instance, who had practiced various forms of discrimination. We even had slavery. But to be enslaved prior to the 1400s, for only 3 reasons. Either you were a victim of a religious persecution, or you had some indebtedness and was enslaved, or you were a prisoner of war. Those were the only 3 reasons you could be enslaved until the 1400s. About 1442, when Magellan, he went around, Henry the Navigator rather, went around the coast of Africa and picked up about 16 blacks and brought them back in 1442 and gave them to the Pope as gifts. And those slaves worked around the Vatican in Italy from 1442 and about 1488. And it became a good thing to have all these blacks working free around the Vatican and in the Pope space. No labor to be paid for. Other people wanted those advantages. So Pope Pius put out a public edict. Pope Innocent put out a public edict saying, look, if you want some slaves, go get some, but get black folk. He put out a public edict saying, if you're going to enslave anybody, enslave black people. And once that hit, all of a sudden everybody got interested in getting slaves. And that started the whole movement in 1488 and 1489. Now, something happened very important in 1495. Y'all know what happened in 1495? Allegedly, for this guy who was over here looking for drugs and some other thing. What was his name? Columbus. Y'all remember that guy? Now, he came over here and he supposedly discovered America about 7 years after the Pope had put out his edict using blacks as slaves. Now, all of a sudden, he goes back to Europe. A race started. All these countries got into a race to develop the Western world that Columbus said he had discovered. And what was the race about? They wanted to colonize and get resources, wealth, gold, silver, and cash crops from the West, because they never knew that the Americas existed. People in Europe never knew that there was a North America, Central America, and a South America. They got into a contest to explore it and to find it and profit from it. And because at that time, prior to that, thank you, sir. Prior to that, the only, can you all hear me as well without this? Which one do you need? You need this one? Okay. So prior to that time, they had Europe all through the 1400s, but they call that, was going through what's called the Dark Ages. Europe was crime-ridden, impoverished, diseased, and they said, we can resuscitate Europe. We can strengthen this continent, and we can find a way to develop the Western world, the Americas, Latin America, Central America, North America. If we can develop that country, we can bring ourselves out of the ditch as an European continent. And so they all said, well, how are we going to do it? They said, we need a labor class. So they all rushed down and picked up the Pope's edict and started grabbing blacks off the west coast of Africa. It was picking those blacks up for an average about $25 a piece. And they started setting up, so they want a 1,500% return on their money. They started selling them for $400-some a piece. And so they started shipping blacks all into this country in Latin America and Central America to put them to work as a labor class. Now, the countries that started at race, it started with Arabs. Arabs were the first ones that started enslaving black folk. I don't know if you all know that or not. Arabs were the first ones that started enslaving black folk, and Arabs have been enslaving black folk now for 1,300 years. Arabs first started enslaving blacks in 765 AD when they marched into Africa in what they call in search of the 3 G's, God, glory, and gold. And they pursued Africa until the 12th century when they overtook Timbuktu and Timbuktu fell, then they started dominating Africa. But Arabs were the first ones. Portuguese were the second ones. Hispanics were the third ones. Then the Germans and the Danes. Then the French. Then the English. The Norwegians on down the line. Then lastly was the American Indians. Everybody's enslaved black folk. And that's what a race was. A contest started to develop the Western world. The rule was he who gets there first with the most slaves and make the most money will be the most powerful nation on earth. And the race began. Everybody was in the race to use black folk except black folk. And began shipping blacks into America. And they shipped black folk in. They justified it initially by saying that it was an economic issue. Everybody knew it was an economic issue. It stayed an economic issue all the way from the 1500s up to the 1700s. In the 1700s, when the evangelical movement moved to this country, they switched enslaving black folk to make it a religious issue. Why? Because King James then wrote, when England took over the slave trade as the biggest one and started leading the slave trades and started winning the race, King James rewrote the Bible, called the King James Version. And even had, what's his name now? What's the writer? Huh? Shakespeare and the rest of them writing. All of them rewrote the Bible. And they rewrote the Bible, then since England was the dominating country for slaves, all the slave states were mandated to use scriptures to justify enslaving the black people. So religion then became a means of codifying slavery. And then the slave owners started teaching black folk that when you hear me talk about the master and the slave in the Bible, on earth, it's the white man is the master and you're the slave. And you're mandated to do three things. One, to accept your station in life. Two, to be humble and obedient. Three, to work hard, don't steal and don't lie. And lastly, to look for pie in the sky after death. And that stayed true up until about 1880. At that time, religion was the justification for slavery. This is important for you now. Slavery then moved from being an economic issue to a religious issue. It stayed a religious issue up until about 1859, again on the eve of the Civil War. On the eve of the Civil War, a guy named Darwin, Charles Darwin. Remember Charles Darwin? He wrote a book called The Survival of the Species, or The Survival of the Fittest. And what he's been doing, along with a lot of other pseudoscientists, was trying to connect a linkage between the lowest and the highest in life. What he was saying is that, is an amoeba that's that small, is it greater or smaller than an elephant that's big? Is a blade of grass lower in the chain than a tree? And they kept setting up these vertical systems. They call them genuses and species, going from the lowest of everything to the highest. But by that time, the white society had successfully redistributed by 1860 almost 97% of all the wealth and power into the hands of the dominant white society. The race was nearly over by 1860 or 1859 when Charles Darwin wrote his book. And they looked around and said, look, there are whites, now let's get to human beings. We worked out the relationship between between a bush and a tree and an amoeba and an elephant. But look at the black. The black has nothing, he's on the bottom, and the white master's on the top. He owns and controls everything with all the education. So obviously the white man must be superior to the black man. And so then all of a sudden, racism and this whole issue switched. Slavery all switched from being a religious issue, it became a biological issue. When it became a biological issue, all governments mandated that you must put a person's race on his birth certificate, driver's license, whatever it is. It became a biological issue. But the race was over then. When the race was over, they looked around. And since whites had used slavery for so long, whites own everything. Almost 100% of everything, 99.5% belonged to the dominant white society. The slave owned nothing. The white was on top, the black was in a ditch. The race was over. When the race was over and blacks had nothing and whites had everything, the race ended. And what the society did then, they took the word race, R-A-C-E, They scratched the E off the end of race and stuck a suffix called ISM. ISM is a suffix which means keep the prevailing conditions, let nothing change. And that's where racism came from. The race was over. Whites won it, they had everything. They took the E off the end of the word and stuck ISM. That's what racism is. Racism is a competitive relationship starting out to get wealth and resources and power. But what they teach you now is that racism has something to do with liking people, getting along with people. That's not racism. And when I ask people, I said, do you know what racism is? They say it's prejudice. You cannot eradicate prejudice. Everybody got a right to be prejudiced. All prejudice is you got a preconceived judgment or feeling about something based on previous experience. Right now, because of ice cream, I love burgundy cherry ice cream. So guess what? I'm prejudiced towards burgundy cherry ice cream. So now when I want some ice cream, I exercise my prejudice. I say, I'm going to get me some ice cream, some burgundy cherry ice cream, because that's what I'm prejudiced for. Now I say, now, where am I going to get it from? I've gotten a lot of ice cream from a lot of stores, half of one worth a quarter. That's what Baskin-Robbins has the best. So now I'm biased towards which ice cream parlor? Baskin-Robbins. I'm biased to go there to exercise my prejudice. Now when I get into Baskin-Robbins, I'll walk up and down the counter, looking at all the cherry mocha, the black chocolate rock, peppermint juicy fruit. I look at all that ice cream. And then guess what I'm doing now? Now I am discriminating. I'm discriminating against what kind of ice cream I want to satisfy my prejudice. And so I'll pick, and I go down and I say, oh, burgundy cherry, that's it. Now, that prejudice, that bias, that discrimination has nothing in the world to do with racism. Don't let people keep tricking you by comparing prejudice and discrimination with racism. That's why all the gays jump and say, well, we're just as bad off as black folk. They're prejudiced against us. That has nothing to do with racism. You tell people, I don't care about your being prejudiced or discriminated. That doesn't bother me as a black person. I'm scared of racism. I'm scared of the fact that you're going to own and control everything. That's what you should be working on. So everything you do in this city must go after eradicating racism. Not prejudice, not bigotry, not getting along with people, not bias. You must try to redistribute some wealth and resources back in the hands of black folk as quickly as you can. That's what you need to be working on. Now, since we have never done that, and I told you slavery maldistributed almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, businesses, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. Well, look at what's happening. We never corrected it. And since we never corrected racism the way it started out, that means in this country right now that the average white person in America has 3,500 times more wealth than the average black person. Y'all didn't hear that, did you? Let me give it to you again. You cannot be equal when the average white person in this society has 3,500 times more wealth than the average black person. Even if you're a middle-class black in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, the white person has 800 to 900 times more wealth than you. If you're a black female, that means the white female has $1 for every 2 cents you have to run a household. Let me even be, since you all still don't understand this point. In America right now, where you think you're so equal in Baltimore, that you're so free, that you can spend all your time enjoying life and not worried about what's going to happen to you, in this society right now, American society, I got 2 white men. I got 2 white Americans alone that have more wealth than all 36 million black folk put together. If I take Ralph Ellison and Bill Gates, they got more wealth than all the black folk in America put together. Where is your equal opportunity? Where are you equal? What are we thinking about when it's wealth that decides what you own and control, decides what freedom and opportunities you're going to have in this society. Now, you want to know what is wealth. Wealth is not income. Don't confuse wealth with income. Income is what you get to maintain you from one week to the other. Wealth is what you got left over after you paid your bills and stacked it up. Wealth is surplus labor. That's all wealth is. Wealth means somebody has labored and you've stored it up and it has value on it. That's how whites were able to become rich and get all this wealth. That all those millions of blacks, the 5 million blacks they had enslaved, they never paid them. And when the European society sent whites to America, they said, go to America. They didn't say what the lies you hear nowadays about, well, whites came to America looking for religious freedom. No white person was that stupid. No white person was getting on a ship, sailing for 4 months around the world to find some place to pray. They didn't come here looking for no religious freedom. They came here because the governments were saying, if you go to America, we would guarantee you, we would give you free land and free labor. And you would have to be an idiot not to be rich if we give you free land and free labor. And that's where the whole franchising system started, like Burger King and McDonald's that set up a restaurant for you. They give you all the equipment and the menu and all the food, and you pay them a free. And they sent the people over here from Europe to inhabit America. They gave them soldiers. They gave them some money and told them the soldiers would protect you away from the Indians. And we'll give you some slaves. And what you got to do is raise the crop products, tobacco, indigo, rice, cotton, and send it back to Europe. And we'll pay you a fee. That's what it was all about. Everybody got a chance to get rich but black folk because we never understood what racism was. We still don't understand what racism is. So we got black folk right now in America, in this city, that try to speak out on issues affecting black folk. And as soon as they start saying, we're not going to take any more of this, you're mistreating us, somebody says, well, that black guy is racist. A black person cannot be a racist. Let me say that again so y'all didn't hear me. It is impossible under present conditions in this country and any place in the world for a black people to be racist. You don't have any wealth and power. You cannot control what white folks do. You cannot enslave white folk. You cannot tell them who they can marry and who they can't marry. You can't deny them an education. You can't make them pick cotton 6 days a week, 18 hours a day for you. You cannot be a racist. You can be bigoted and biased. And I hear that all the time. He's a doctor answer, but I heard that black guy out the parking lot. He called that white guy a redneck cracker. Isn't he a racist? No, he might be bigoted towards white people and poor whites, but he's not racist. That parking lot attendant can't do anything to white people. All he can do is talk. He cannot stop white folk from getting an education, from owning a business. And so what they've done now is confuse the issue of what racism is so that all black folk in America are paralyzed. They're scared to do anything. They won't speak up for themselves. They won't fight for themselves. They're scared somebody's going to call them a racist. They can't even be something that somebody's calling them. And worse than that, you've allowed all the people you're competing with to also fall underneath that cover and declare they're just as bad off as you. That's why Hispanics and Arabs and Asians and humpbacks and lesbians and midgets all get into the affirmative action program. So you got to learn how to play the games. Now let's deal with some other concepts now that you understand what racism is. Another concept is minority. Any black person in Baltimore, let somebody call him minority, you should cut him after you shoot him. That is an insult for somebody to call you, and if you to call yourself a minority, nobody's supposed to be that stuck on stupid, unless you got a stupid license. You live in a social democracy that was set up in 1789. The first law of Congress in 1789, we became a nation, said this is a white country. This is a white country, and the quota on black folk coming in is 0, unless he comes in as a slave. And the rule in a social democracy then is that the majority will win and rule, and the minority will lose and suffer. Why would you go around calling yourself a loser? I'm a loser, I'm a minority, and I'm suffering. Why would you do it? Why would you teach your children to call themselves a loser? And worse than that is in cities like Baltimore. Why would you in Baltimore be going around pushing the city to give you a minority set aside when you make up 65% of the population of the city? You are the majority. Nobody on earth is supposed to be that silly. I go to Detroit, Michigan, and I'm speaking to the legislature, and they said, well, Dr. Anderson, before you talk, we want to give you a plaque. And I said, no, before you give me a plaque, tell me what are you doing for black folk? They said, well, we got a 5% set-aside program downtown. I said, downtown where? They said, in the Office of Minority Affairs. I said, this city is 90% black. Why are you calling black folk minorities in a city where they're the majority? So, hey, somebody's elevator does not go to the second floor. Why you keep calling yourself a minority and trying to get a minority program when you're the majority? So the one white woman on the city council said, well, Dr. Anderson, well, if you, what do you want us to do? I said, in this city, the city council needs to pass a resolution saying that in this city, black people are the majority population. Once it's pointed out that you are the majority population, then it is against the law for other people coming in and rape and rob you through the government. Whites cannot come in there and take all the resources out. It's a violation of your rights. If you've had the city council in Baltimore to pass a resolution saying in this city in Baltimore, we are a black city. That's 65% black programs. I am the majority, and you're supposed to develop all these resources in this city for me. I should not have to come to Baltimore and find absolutely no black businesses of any nature. Why am I, when I go to Detroit, Michigan again as an example. Detroit, Michigan is a 90% black city. They got 146 gas stations in Detroit, Michigan. 146 gas stations in Detroit, Michigan. Arabs own 141 in a black city. In the black city of Detroit, Michigan. Arabs own not only the gas stations, they own the grocery stores, party stores, liquor stores. The Koreans in Detroit, they own the barbecue restaurants, the nail shops, the wig shops, the hair products, distributorships. The East Indians in Detroit, they own the rest of the businesses. They own the Dunkin' and Donuts, the cheap motels, the check cashing services. Blacks own nothing in a city where they're the majority population. I got 1 million black folk in Detroit that owns nothing. Now, what's the impact of that? That's why in the 2000 census, the United States government declared Detroit to be the poorest city in the United States with the highest crime rate. And everybody's sitting back in the black leadership saying, oh, why are we so poor? You're poor because you're stuck on stupid. There is a direct relationship in this country between how many businesses you own and how poor you're going to be as a group. Those groups that have no businesses are going to be poor and imprisoned. It is not the government's responsibility to help you do anything. The government's responsibility and the police department's responsibility is to put you in jail and keep you out of the way. When you have a Katrina situation, which is on one of my videos, I started talking about Katrina 7 to 8 years before it even happened. It was almost 10 years before it predicted that was going to happen to Katrina. They got me crying on the video and they wouldn't take it out. But the video telling me what's going to happen in that city because the poverty rate was so high, 82% poverty rate in New Orleans before Katrina even hit. And nobody was concerned and understand that if you don't have any businesses, you're going to be poor. The reason black people are the poorest people in the United States is because we don't own businesses. Now watch this now. In this country, in America, the group with the highest income in America today are Asians. The median family income for an Asian in America is $55,000 for median family income. Y'all follow this along, so when long after I've left you this evening, you'll never forget this as long as you live. The median family income from an Asian is the highest in the United States at any other group, $55,000. Underneath them are whites. The median family income from a white person is about $53,000 to $54,000. The median family income for these Hispanics that you're also worried about and getting them into the country are over blacks. They're at $32,000 and $33,000. The median family income for black people is $19,400. Now, why are black folk on the bottom in income? Here it is now. Asians got a $55,000 income, median family income over here. Here's why they got that income. 1 out of every 10 Asians are in business. Again, $55,000 income, they're at the top. 1 out of 10 are in business. Let's go down to the next level. You got whites now over here. Whites are at $53,000 to $54,000 income in that general range. They got 1 out of every 34 in business. Hispanics got 1 out of 54 in business. Black folk at the bottom with 1 out of 104. If you don't have any businesses, you're going out of existence. Why is that now? It's because all you're doing is working for a living. We're the only people that encourage our children to go off and get a good education and go get a good job. No other group of people tell their children that. No other group is that silly to tell their children, go off and get a good education and then go get yourself a good job working in a white company someplace. Everybody else tells their kids something different, and I'll explain to you with Chinese a little later. We're the only people that don't encourage our children to start businesses. If you go put your child into a job, or if you're working a job, you got to understand the purpose of a job. The purpose of a job is not to enrich you. You cannot get rich working a job. The only way you can get rich working a job is if you're good at stealing. A job is designed to maintain you. A job is designed to keep you one way from the welfare lines, unemployment, and food stamps. You work a job until you get too old and they retire you, then you got to go out and beg on the streets. You might get lucky to give you a silver watch. A business will redistribute wealth and power to you 8 times faster. If you have a business, you can also get a salary, but you can also get capital gains. You can also get depreciation. You can get appreciation. You can you got all kind of tax loopholes. You can write off all kind of things against your businesses. You can do all kind of things. The system is set up where those who don't have businesses pay all the taxes. Winn-Dixie had about 500 stores one year when I was over education in the state of Florida. I looked at the record. They had about 526 stores in the United States. Winn-Dixie, like Safeway, 126 stores. And that thing one year they only paid $9 in taxes. They got all kinds of loopholes, flip back, take backs, and everything else to make sure they don't pay any taxes. You work at a job, you got nothing you can write off except your interest payment on your house and your taxes on your house. That's it. The rest of your money is going to take care of the rest of this country. And we're the only people who have no businesses. Black folk are paying more than their share of taxes because we are so silly we won't start businesses. Now, let me go to another issue. If you start businesses, what must you do? How do you start those businesses? I put all that in Powernomics. Start businesses at this late game. It's too late for you just to simply go into a business. It is too late to simply go into a business, Randy or randomly say, well, I'm going to start a business. I don't see any flower shops on the street, so I'm going to start a flower shop. It ain't going to cut it. Now, at this point, the door is almost closed on us in this country. If you're going to go into a business, you must go into a business where you have a competitive advantage. You must be able to tell me or somebody, the reason I'm going into this business is because I have a competitive advantage over my competitors. And I'll ask you, what are your competitive advantages? You must build your business around two things. Wherever your people dominate in population, or wherever your people dominate in spending patterns. That's how you go into business. And if you unify yourselves, you got a chance. If you don't, you're through. Now you hear people talking about, Dr. As we should go into business because we got a $700 billion annual disposable income. You're right. They said we're the ninth richest nation on earth. You're right. Black people in America's annual disposable income is higher than Sweden, Pakistan, India, North Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, and all the African countries put together. But we are the poorest people in the country because we do not practice group economics. Everybody on earth practices group economics but us. Again, Powernomics talks about all this stuff. So did black labor, white wealth. Everybody practices group economics but us. Now, what is group economics? Group economics means you must learn how to pool your resources in a vertical way and buy from your own people, up and down a chain. Just that simple. It says nothing, you don't have to love all black folk, you don't have to be kissing on them and hugging on them, but you should support them and buy from them. We won't do it. Now, in group economics, the rule is this. Your money is supposed to bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your hands. It's supposed to bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your hands or leaves your race. That means that if you got $1 in your pocket right now, that dollar should go to another black person and another black person, 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 till it passes through 8 to 12 times before it leaves and go to a non-black hand. In America, Hispanic money bounces 6 to 7 times. Hispanics in America right now that you're all competing with, they spend their money to their own people 6 to 7 times before it leaves a Hispanic hand. White money bounces 8 to 12 times. Arab and Asian money bounces 13 to 14 times. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black money doesn't bounce once. As soon as a black person gets paid, he'll run over you trying to get to a non-black business to spend it. As soon as right now, if you're out on the street, every black dollar right now in Baltimore is going into a non-black hand right now. They're committing suicide. Every time you fail to spend your money with your own people, not only have you failed to practice group economics, but you flush $11 down the toilet. When you leave here right now and you go out there and you stop at a gas station and you buy $1 worth of gasoline, which is about a spoonful about like that. If you buy $1 worth of gasoline, you just threw $11 down the toilet. It didn't go to a black hand. Anytime you put your money in another group's hands, you're aiding them in wiping you out. Now, if you're going to practice group economics in this city, what do? You must first start by building a community. You all right now in Baltimore are ideally set to have been power bases economically in this city. It's inexcusable for you all, even 20 years ago, not to have controlled this city economically. Even before they built Harbor Place there. Every business in Harbor Square right now should have been black owned. You all are the poor. Those places couldn't exist without you all. You're subsidizing them. While you're subsidizing everybody else's businesses, they are boycotting the few businesses that you got. If I find a black business in the city right now, I guarantee you that everybody is boycotting it. You will never, ever see, and if you do, let me know about it. You will not see a white person get in his car, for instance, on a Saturday morning, like this morning, drive into a black Baltimore area, get out of his car, go into a black-owned store, buy a black product produced by a black person. If you all see that, take a picture of it. But I guarantee you, every black in this auditorium and this city, every chance he gets, he's going to get in his car and drive to a white suburbs or to a white mall, to a white store. And every time he does that, he is transporting his money out of his race and making it possible for his competitors to send their kids to college, to pay their mortgage, and to feed their children. We are poor because we keep giving our money away. And we can't make it. Time is just about run out on us. And that's why I was in Detroit, Michigan, trying to build this whole thing that sometimes the white newspaper called it African Town, a version of it. And I was building a 22-acre site up there. And I was putting in 26 factories, black-owned factories, and about 42 black-owned businesses, retail businesses. Because black folk don't have an industrial base, so they can start producing and manufacturing. And some silly blacks in government and the whites came out against it and called me all kinds of dirty names. Even had nerve to call me a racist. Because I came in to help black folk, they called me a racist. What I'm saying, well, Dr. The white newspaper said, your book should be on the shelf with my Kampf, with Hitler's books. I said, why? Well, because you only talking about black folk, focusing on black folk. You're biased, you want to help the rest of the people. I said, in this city of Detroit, Michigan, y'all listen to this. In the city of Detroit, that's 90% black. They got a Arab town, Mexican town, hockey town, court town, pole town, Chinatown, Greek town. I said, I'm going to build a black town. Doctor, that's racist. And so just about 2 weeks ago, I just said, well, you all keep it, I'm gone. I said, black leadership, and that's silly, to sit there and from the mayor's office down and let white folks tell you that you can't focus on the needs of your own people. As a matter of fact, one black woman on the city council came out against me and went on every talk show in America, trying to denounce me. And I had radio stations coming in, the BBC broadcasting company from England came over, a Canadian broadcasting company, ABC, NBC, Wall Street Journal, all want to interview me. He said, Doctor, that's the kind of stuff you're talking about. Nobody else talks about that. We thought y'all were happy with integration. You're talking about black folks should do what? I said, black folks need to go back and rebuild their own communities. We are the only people in this country that do not have communities. It is impossible, I'm going to tell you a black businessman now, it is impossible in this city for you all to get into wealth and power unless you have communities. There is not one black community in America. Not one in the entire United States. All we got in America are neighborhoods, which you all cut short and call it the hood. We don't have any black communities. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. A community is where you store your wealth, your culture, your history, your power, your income, your businesses. To have a community, you must have three elements to have a community. One, you must have a wholly independent economic structure that can produce taxes, products, services, and goods, and business opportunities for your own people. That's the first thing. Secondly, you must have a code of conduct that would teach you to buy from, support from, and love and care about your own people. And thirdly, you must have some people in elected office that'll speak for you inside and outside. We don't have any blacks any place in the United States that would speak up for black folk. Every organization in the country that I know of, and every black politician I know of, they're into everything but blackness. They talk about anything but blackness. If I were to ask him, if I go to the NAACP and say, Mr. NAACP, who do you all represent? They said, Dr. Anderson, we represent minorities and people of color. I said, okay, NAACP, you're minorities and people in color. Let me go over here. Urban League, who do you all represent? We represent diversity and multicultural and poor people. And I said, okay, let's go over here to this one. I said, Jesse, who do you represent? He said, I represent the rainbow. And I can say, who represents black people? Nobody. Nobody wants to represent black folk. And not on that, then here comes all your elected officials. And when they speak up with issues, they go out to the marketplace, they don't even fight for black people. I don't see any black elected officials fighting to get economic started for black folk in this country. Name me a black person. You had one person that used to push that. And I used to love him for it. Back when I was over education in the state of Florida, Perrin Mitchell was from this city. Perrin Mitchell understood the importance of black folk having businesses and having an economy. And back in the civil rights days, they made that point and said, we got to have businesses. We don't want just integration and civil rights. We want some businesses. And the white liberals and the Jews told them, if you all start talking about businesses, we're going to walk away from you and leave you. And that's where that gap started between blacks and Jews. Perrin Mitchell will tell you about, well, Perrin is dead now, isn't he? He's not dead. Perrin Mitchell will tell you about that. You got to start businesses. Now, start the businesses that I told you. Start businesses where you have a competitive advantage. Now, you ask me, what are your competitive advantages? For instance, you are the only people that got certain kind of hair, for instance. You got a quality of hair that nobody else on earth has. It's your hair. You all are the one that got it. You are the consumers. You are the users of it. That being true, why is it that Koreans control 84% of the dollars in your hair? How is it that Koreans control 84 cents of every dollar that black folks spend on their own hair, and nails and wigs and everything? Huh? Because we're not controlling it. That industry should belong to black folk. It should go vertical. You should control everything from the bottom, from producing the hair products, all the way to the top to the retail shops. The same thing in leather. Black folk right now consume more leather and wear more leather than any other group. There's two kinds of leather being produced right now in the United States. Fine leather by the Italians, some of the other lesser quality leather by the Asians. And blacks are wearing the leather. We wear more leather than anyone else, but we're buying it from other people that are producing it. Black folk drink and spend 43 cents out of every dollar spent on Scotch liquor. 42 cents out of every theater ticket comes out of a black pocket. You don't have any movie studios, you don't own any distribution companies, but you're supporting the movie industry. You're supporting the Scotch liquor industry. Because we're not practicing group economics. And we're losing. Start businesses and start keeping your money in your own communities. Go around this city and find you a district. Find a district where you got good traffic flow. And pull all the blacks, like fill this auditorium up with black people. And say, we're going to start some businesses. And we're going to buy from our own people. Everybody else is boycotting us. You start boycotting other people. And spending your money with your own people. You got to wear your gas stations, your bakeries, your automobile dealerships, your theaters. Start your own and go there. And when you go to a black person, you buy from a black person, what you do is called cost-benefit analysis. You make sure that every penny you spent, you get the biggest bang for the buck. If you don't spend your money with your own people, you lost it. Now, if you spend money with a black person, you tell the black person, I'm going to buy from you. If you're running a bakery, if your bread is hard today and it's not the best bread, I'm still going to buy from you. I'm going to buy from you because of cost-benefit analysis. If I don't buy your hard bread today, even though you're selling it to me for 50 cents, and I can go out to a white store and get the same and get softer bread for 40 cents, where is the benefit? Who loses? You lose. What you do is you make him say, look, I'm going to buy your bread, and I'm going to keep buying your bread, but I'm giving you a short time to get me a better quality bread and get me a better service in here. And I want you to clean up this place, clean up the business, and more importantly, to change your negative, nasty attitude when I come in here. When you go into a black store, you tell him, you know, change your attitude. Rush to the store, you see a customer, hug and kiss on him, and walks in the door. And say, would you love to sit down? I'll wipe the seat off for you, fan you if you want to. Just enjoy yourself in my store. It reminds me when I was way back many years ago, when I was dating in Detroit, Michigan. I was living at that time. I used to go by the Howard Johnson store to get my ice cream, y'all. I used to go by the Howard Johnson to get some ice cream, and I used to get banana splits then. I'll go in on a regular basis. But Howard, the neighborhood had changed over, and all the waitresses were whites. And it dawned on me one day. I said, boy, I come to this Howard Johnson, and all the waitresses are whites. I said, I got to make it. I said, this is not right. So when the waitress would wait on me and get me my ice cream, and one day I said, look, would you give me one of those suggestion cards in the back there? She said, yes. She looked in the bar and gave me a suggestion card. I wrote on the suggestion card, dear manager, it might come as a surprise to you, but this is a growing black neighborhood. It would be very positive for you and a compliment to the city in this neighborhood if you were to hire some blacks in this Howard Johnson. I would appreciate it as a customer and a sincere customer, and put it back in the box. I came out there about a month later. This time, and I walked into the Howard Johnson. I walked up to the place where they have carryouts. I stood there at the counter like this, waiting. And I looked, and there's a sister down there. They'd hired a sister. And she's laying on the counter like this, reading the newspaper. I stood there for at least 15 minutes while she's reading the newspaper. Then finally, without even looking up, she turned her head to me like this and said, do you want something? I said, yes, ma'am. Would you give me another one of those suggestion cards over there out of that box? I got that suggestion card. Dear manager, I'm the same guy that wrote that comment letter. I said, fire her as fast as you can and go back to what you had before. Make our people do right by their own people. Make them respect you and appreciate you. And if he comes into you and gives you a bad job, don't say, I'm going to hate black folk, I ain't going to ever buy from black folk anymore. Say, no, you're going to come back here and do this job right. I got blacks always saying, well, Dr. Anderson, I don't want to go to no black store because I had a black guy do this for me 10 years ago. He did a bad job. I don't want to deal with black folk anymore. White folks been doing things bad to you for 500 and 600 years. You're still dealing with them. But anyhow, we're going to have to start businesses. And when you get ready for that, the Harvest Institute will help you. And we're anxious to help black folks start business all over the United States. We got special programs for it. And you can do it. And again, as a last example, let me compare Detroit again. Let me take Harlem. In Harlem, they have an Asian town, Chinatown there. Chinatown has about 100, if I remember, about 180-something Asians in Chinatown in Harlem. In Detroit, Michigan, Detroit has 1 million black folk. Now, watch this now. When I go into Asian town, in Chinatown, in Harlem, I looked around. Harlem has 34 banks, Asian banks, with only 187,000 Asians. I go to Detroit, they got 1 million blacks. They got 2 banks. I go look at Harlem, Chinatown again. Harlem had something like about, I think, 400, I think, manufacturing, restaurants. Here I go to Detroit, they had something like 15 in a city with 1 million blacks. I looked at the number of manufacturers they had, about 180-something manufacturing outlets. Detroit had something like about 10 of those. Now, I said, now, how is it that these Asians can have all these businesses? And the competitive advantage is this. With all those restaurants, 400 restaurants, watch this. What do they have in 400 restaurants that they primarily always serve in almost every restaurant? Some noodles. They have some kind of noodles. So what the Asians did, they had, since they eaten all those noodles, what kind of manufacturing companies do they set up? Noodle companies. Now, if they're eating noodles, what did they put on noodles? Huh? No, they had some kind of, what's that stuff they put on at the dark stuff, what is it called? Huh? Soy sauce. So also they had all these Asian soy sauce companies that manufacture soy sauce to go on it. Then, and when they finish eating in a Chinese restaurant, what do they give you? A fortune cookie. I found all these little companies that manufactured fortune cookies. And so then in the Wall Street Journal, then they put in there that they said they would not hire any blacks in any Chinese restaurant under any circumstance. They said because we set up our businesses to do what? To produce jobs and wealth for our people. We will not hire any blacks. You will not see any blacks in the Chinese restaurants or Benihana restaurants. They're not going to hire you. They don't want you in their restaurants working. No, and yet everybody works for their own people except us. That's why our unemployment rate right now in America is 35%. For Asians and Arabs, the unemployment rate is 0. Y'all understand that? It's 0 for Asians and Arabs. For whites, it's 4.5. For Hispanics, it's 4.6. You all should be very concerned about this immigration bill. Why is this country so concerned about finding jobs for 12 to 20 million illegal immigrants who have a 4-point-something or 0 unemployment rate, and the black unemployment rate in America is 35%. In Baltimore, your unemployment rate is 48%. In Detroit, your unemployment rate is 48%. In Pittsburgh, the black unemployment rate is 49%. In New York, your unemployment rate is 51%. For black youth, it's 87%. Why aren't you all busting down on your black congressmen in this city saying, quit worrying about illegal immigrants' unemployment and do something about this black unemployment? And the best way to do something about black unemployment is this, in closing now, make black folk job producers and not job seekers. I'll give it to you again. Nobody is going to create jobs for black folk. You must create your own jobs. You create your own jobs by creating your own businesses. You create your own businesses by buying from your own people. That's how simple it is. And that's why you come across America. Everybody understands the importance of building these communities so you can produce products, services, and goods. That's why you come in, when an Asian leaves the Far East, he says, I'm going to America. When I get to America, the first thing I'm going to do is find me some people that look like me, walk like me, and talk like me, so I can build me a Chinatown, a Japantown, a little Saigon, a little Cambodia, a little Vietnam, a little Korea. When the Hispanics come across the border, they say, I'm going down to build me a Mexican town, or a little Havana, a little Hialeah. You go across America and you can find Japantowns, Chinatowns, Cork towns, Pole towns, Greek towns, little Italys, French towns, but you'll never find a black town. Because we won't come together and unite. And as a result, in 3 years we're going to perish. These immigrants are going to bury us alive when this law is passed. They're going to bring in 12 to 20 million illegals floating around here right now. The illegals have already surpassed you. They caught us. So when slavery was going on in 1840s, you did not have one single Hispanic in the United States, or nor one Arab, nor one Asian, but you had 4.5 million blacks. In 1900s, you only had 100,000 Hispanics in the United States. You had 11 million black folk. They got the same identical birth rate, and Hispanics have now caught you and passed you. They're not coming in this country to get along with you. They're coming here to surpass you and supplant you. Their intent is to bury you. All these people you all are calling minorities now, up until 1970, all the Hispanics, Asians, and Arabs that you all call people of color, they were married to, went to school with, lived with, and passed as whites. On a driver's license now of a Hispanic, he's a white person speaking Spanish. It's on there, I am white, on his immigration papers, and on his driver's license. They're coming here to compete with you. And when that 12 to 20 million pass, and you all better raise hell about this fast before it passes, and they're debating it right now in Congress. When they debate that and they legalize 12 to 20 million, their population would jump from 44 million all the way up to almost nearly 60 million. You're now still stuck at somewhere between 39. That means they've already doubled your population. And in that immigration bill, immigrants can now bring in their parents, their spouses, and their children. And the projections are from the think tanks we're working with, that means another 30 to 35 million would come in here. That means Hispanics will go up to almost 90 million while you're all still stuck in the 30 million. Now, common sense would tell you this. When Hispanics outnumber you 3 to 1, whites have outnumbered you 8 to 1 for all these years. If you didn't, and now Hispanics have kicked you out. We were the number 2 population for 400 years. We've got kicked out of being number 2 by the Hispanics. We're going down to number 3. When these Asian and Arabs come in here, they're going to kick you out of number 3. You're going down to number 4. If you got nothing after 400 or 500 years in this country of being number 2, use your creative imagination to figure out what you're going to get when you become number 4. It's coming. In 3 years, you're going to be 4th-class citizens. And the projections are that by the year 2015, that almost half the people living in America, Caribbean, Brazil, and Africa are going to die. That means you can go in those countries and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You 5, you're dead. It's going to happen. Either as a direct result of man-made disasters or natural disasters. Black folk are ill-prepared to take care of themselves in this country. You don't have any hospitals, you don't produce any food, any water, any medicine, anything. And when these diseases come in this country, and they're coming, all these flu and diseases, and you see in the food belt, and when you get these diseases into your neighborhood, they're going to shut you off and you can't get out. You have no medicine and no way of taking care of yourself. We don't control the water. Started demanding that your elected officials come into the black community and started setting up some prophylactic measures for taking care of black folk. Starting businesses so you can produce stuff and organize yourselves. But anyway, I'll quit here. I'll put in my little time. I'll take a few questions from you. Then I'm going to go home and get me a nice cold shower. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I'll take 2 or 3 questions from you, then I'm gonna haul off and leave here.
All right, give another round of applause for Dr. Claud Anderson.
No, I had
Turn the mic on.
I had one friend that wrote a book about the Federal Reserve System.
If we can ask everyone to quiet down, please. That's in the auditorium right now. If you can quiet down.
All right, I'm trying to think of what his name was. And as a matter of fact, I wrote a testimony for him.
I just want to ask you about the fiat money system and how historically it has never worked successfully, and how eventually, it's going to cause the demise of this country. And if you have wealth,
Were you talking about hedge funds? Which ones were you saying now?
Fiat money system, in that your money is not really backed by anything.
Yeah.
They just print enough money. They just print as much money as they want to print. You know, the Congress promises things without raising taxes, and the way they do it is they go to the Federal Reserve System and they.
Well, see, the Federal Reserve that's a private banking system. It's owned by the Rothschilds and most of the Europeans.
Exactly.
That's been owned by them ever since about 1730s. The dollars that you're currently dealing with, paper dollars, have about a $9 value, 9 cents value rather. So a paper dollar is worth about 9 cents. If you really want to play it safe, as I said, you would go to precious metals, either go to silver, gold, diamonds, you know, stuff like that, platinum. The easiest one that if somebody asked me, I would tell them the safest one to go to is the silver dollar.
What about offshore?
Offshore banking?
Yes.
That's reasonably safe.
Maybe in Europe or something.
Yeah, but you got to understand there's a major consortium of extremely wealthy international people that are running all the industries all around the world. I used to know most of the organization. When I was in the White House with President Carter, I knew all those. I don't know them anymore.
So you can't run from them?
No, but because they're controlling it. And right now, they don't care about international boundaries. They're just moving the money around to wherever they can get the biggest profit and the biggest bang for the dollar. And I mean, that includes the Bushes and everybody else. That the whole thing, you're talking about the skull and bones with the Bushes. Yeah. And right now, that's why Bush doesn't mind running up the. When we left the White House, or Clinton left, I was Clinton's deputy political strategist. He left about a $5 billion surplus, and now you got up to right into the trillions of dollars worth of debt. All Japan can call a note on tomorrow and collapse your economy. China can call your debt tomorrow and collapse it.
Collecting a lot of American money.
Yeah. Yeah. See
that.
Either Japan or China can collapse your economy tomorrow. We don't have the money to pay them. It's like a credit card. If you got a credit card, somebody say, "I want you to pay off that credit card tomorrow." Where you get the money from? So no, the country's in a world of trouble. But wealthy people don't really care. They're no longer national. They're not tied internationally anymore. They're into international politics. That's why the Bushes don't mind keeping the ports open, bringing all these people in. They want to build a superhighway right from Mexico, right across the United States to Canada. That's this whole thing about what's the thing that Bush that Clinton passed with the what? Yeah. See, nobody cares about that anymore. They want to tie. See, the people that are in trouble. Let me tell you, the people in trouble are black people. The Europeans, see, every group of people on earth are tied into an economic base except black folk. The Europeans are tied into the common market and the euro dollar. Asians are now into NAFTA. Not Asians, but the Latin American countries into NAFTA. The Chinese and the Asians, they're into what we call the Pacific Rim. They got their economic order. The only countries that are not in an economic order and don't have an international economy are black folk. No African countries, Brazil, black Caribbean, and black in America. We're not tied in anything. We're outside the system. And so that's your problem. You're not tied in. You're not linked to any place.
First of all, brother, I'd like to.
Did you know that about the Pacific Rim groups and all them?
No.
Yeah, no. The Asians got their own economy called the Pacific Rim. All the Asian countries belong to it. They're trying to come up with their currency. They're going to float eventually up and down. That's all the Asian countries all the way around. Korea, China, Formosa, Hong Kong, all of them. NAFTA, that was what NAFTA was about with Clinton, trying to get NAFTA. He's trying to link up all the Americas, basically for the Hispanics. And the Europeans, they're trying to hook up theirs through the euro dollar. That's really what the Iraqi war started about, because they wanted to control the oil because they could collapse the American economy by taking over by redirecting the Iraqi oil away from America. That's one reason why Bush wanted to invade the country, because that way, as long as they can get that, they can show up the American dollar. If worst came to worst, they could do it. And most of that money is being expropriated right now. I mean, most of the oil, nobody knows where it's going. But that was one of the biggest reasons why they wanted to invade Iraq, to be able to compete with the euro dollar. That's why the European countries didn't want to support the invasion of Iraq. See, Germany, France, all those countries, they're not going to support the United States in invading Iraq. They know that what you want is control the oil to try to stabilize the dollar if necessary at some point in time.
First of all, brother, I'd like to thank you and your think tank for the endless work you've been doing for our people. I have the Powernomics DVD that you discussed earlier about you crying on there when you was talking about the New Orleans job rate. One solution that you gave was man-made ponds to raise seafood, and another one was the George Washington Carver supermarket. Those were brilliant ideas. Since Katrina, I don't think the man-made ponds, we would be able to do that there in Louisiana, although I still think that idea is good. Do we need to find another place where we can harvest seafood?
Man-made ponds. Well, that was about 95, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we first started messing around with trying to create our own pond production for seafood back in about 69 and 1970. And in 1970, we introduced catfish farming into Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. But whites jumped on that immediately and captured that and started raising catfish and dominated that and made it a major industry. A few blacks got into it, but they can never be too successful because you're not vertically integrated. If you can't control the production at the bottom, the distribution, and the retail outlets and the processing of it, you're out of business. And plus that, raising fish in ponds gets to be counterproductive. There's not very much difference between raising it in the ocean and raising it in a pond. You still got the same environmental pollution problems. You still got runoff from rain into the pond. You still got animals going there. You still got birds flying over, poo-pooing into it. You still got contamination even in the pond. But worse than that, even if you're raising fish in an outside pond, you don't know how many fish you got in that pond. You don't know how many you put in there and how many's been eaten and how many of them ate themselves up. So then you don't know what the size are, when you can pull them out. So outside pond raising is counterproductive. What I went into was called fish factories, not fish farming. I went into fish factories. We do have our fish factories up. I raise all my fish inside buildings in clean water, gourmet fish. And what people don't understand is that seafood is going to disappear off the face of the earth also in about 20 or 25 years. For a number of reasons. One is overfishing, overregulation, but also overconsumption. You got Asians right now going around the world with seines like vacuum cleaning the ocean. Anything they pull up, they eat it. And that about 43% of all the remaining seafood on the earth is around the Americas. So in about another 20 or 25 years, you won't be able to get seafood anymore. That's gone. Also, it'll be gone because we're dumping about 20 million tons of raw sewage. 20 million tons of raw sewage every day goes into the waters right off the coast of Baltimore here, from New York all the way down. Every time you flush your toilet, you're flushing sewage out in the water. The fish are eating it. The fish got worms in it. And that's on the East Coast and the West Coast. So any fish you're catching now has got either PCB, lead, mercury, or worms in it. And now in Michigan, in the Great Lakes, they got fish now. They got Ebola in it, which is worse than AIDS. When you eat that fish, you catch AIDS from eating the fish. So what I've done now, I raise all my fish inside. My buildings are about, see the size of this room here? My buildings are about, my buildings for fish are about 50 or 100 times bigger than this room. And I keep about 280,000 square feet of floor space. And where in my facility we raise somewhere around 6 to 8 million pounds a year of clean fish and clean water. And by the end of this year, we'll be listed on the stock exchange. You all go buy the stock, and you buy the stock, and it's called Waterland Fisheries. And you buy that. That's black owned. You buy it, and we're also going to set up restaurants all over the country where you can buy. Just like McDonald's and Burger King, y'all can buy the franchises. We give you all the seafood, the shrimp, the lobster, the clams, the oysters, and everything. It's just like McDonald's, okay?
Thanks a lot, man. And I appreciate you being solution-oriented and not just coming to, just lecture. Well, appreciate that.
I'm gonna look. Thanks for this now, okay?
No, we're going to enjoy that.
Okay.
We don't have long, so.
Yeah. One question I'd like to ask. What are you basing your cycle of time when things are closing down? What are you basing your cycle of time of doomsday, which it is, but I'm saying.
Okay. Let me take a shot at what we do. We try to compile resources coming in from a lot of sources, and now, like you asked us why, for instance, I indicate about 50% of the people dying. For instance, in Africa right now, the information supplied us that we're losing about 287,000 to 290,000 blacks are dying every month. not every week, every year, but 287,000 blacks die every month in Africa. Did you know that?
Not that specific number,
Yeah,
no.
and what they're dying from, and the worst conditions haven't hit yet, what they're dying from is a lack of medicine, food, and water.
Right.
And we expect major droughts. And what they're predicting now is that they calculate it based on just using Africa alone, that we can have major droughts in Africa. That's why you see all these hurricanes coming off of African coast coming over. That's because of the hot air, heat coming up and rising off the sand in those jungles. All that they've stripped away too many trees and forests. The people don't have any food to eat. They're starving to death. They have all kind of bacteria infections. They got flesh-eating diseases. They don't have any medicine, no food, and most of them in migration, trying to migrate to other countries, and it's going to worsen. And so most of the institutions are giving us all kind of data, but all of them come up with pretty much the same thing. The death dates look like it's going to be about 2015.
Well, the reason why I asked you that question because it's so similar to the celestial shifting of the heavens, and that does play a factor in people's psyche, whether they know it or not. And
yeah, well, you know, one thing, I don't know if this is late, but there for a while there were some religious groups that also picked year 213. They were predicting Armageddon on 213 to 215. I don't know if that's any connections to that either.
Well, when you look at history, when we had lost our heritage, it was dealing with a certain celestial time in the hemisphere, and it seems like it's going back again because the ice age is upon us again.
Yeah. Well, also the what's the group called, the Jehovah's Witnesses? They were saying, Jehovah's Witnesses were saying 50 or 60 years ago in conclusion that they were predicting that it would be 2013 also. I just thought about it, because what they were saying is that the beginning of World War I. So that was when Satan was supposed to have been kicked out of heaven and woe you to the earth. It comes down here to earth, woe you to the earth, and they say, you know, and that they were predicting that 100 years from that date would be the Armageddon date. And they say that started in 1913. So I don't really know, but celestial and religious groups and all these other groups are predicting pretty much the same time period, though.
It's the last question of the night. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, I want to thank you again. This is very refreshing. I'm a black-owned biomedical and information technology company, and tapping into a $1.3 trillion industry in the United States and a $3.3 trillion in the world.
I should be talking to you then.
But I see myself a loner in this field a lot of times. What kind of strategic plan do you see for African Americans to get into these fields and also other lucrative fields such as green fuel or alternative fuel and mass manufacturing of our own products? I
think it's a fantastic opportunity. But I wish that black folk had not lost all the land we lost. See, back in the 1920s, we had about 20 million acres of land. If we still had those 20 million acres of land, I would love to have seen you use that. And like, for instance, doing what? When I was with President Carter, we came up with this thing called gasohol. You've heard of that, right? Well, that started in response to the 1974 the gas shortages in 1974. And in the White House, we had to try to deal with the windfall profits taxes that all these major oil companies were ripping off the country with the increased oil prices, where oil prices jumped all the way up to about $1.15 at that time. We wanted people to get into the gasohol business, but at that time it wouldn't work because it cost about $1.15 or 20 cents to produce a gallon of gasohol at that time, if I remember. And gas dropped back down to 95 cents or 90 cents, and so nobody would make gasohol. But now again, gas is going to skyrocket again. But the problem is we don't have that many black folk that own enough land to produce enough bio or mass to produce any form of energy. And I'm dealing with the black farmers now. As a matter of fact, I'll be there. They got a rally I think in August, and I'll be their speaker for them. Black farmers, I wanted them to go and start using take the little bit of land we got left. We're down to about 300,000 acres now. We've gone from 20 million to 300,000 in the country. And take that 300,000 and try to bring it back to yield. I want them to start raising fish food for me. Fish food is taking wheat, soybean, and corn and making wheat pellets, pressing it and to feed it to our fish. And most of these blacks are losing their land in the South because they can't grow any crops. And they can't grow any crops, even if they raise the crops. Most of them can't. They're not into the distribution system, even for something like soybeans, which you get $5 a bushel. They're not into the system, and whites won't buy it from them. But they need their own economy that's parallel and outside the white economy. But if you can do anything in biomass or greening and alcohol, anything, I think do it. And I just said I'm not that familiar with all the ways you can do it now.
All right. We thank everybody for coming out tonight. Give it up for Dr. Claud Anderson one more time. I can't. Yeah. So, brothers and sisters, stay in tune with the Soul Violence Nation. Come to 219 East 25th Street. We'll have these DVDs available for you on Tuesday evening. You can come or call us and check on the status of the DVDs and the CDs. We thank you for coming out.